Welcome to Teen Talk. I'm Kim Danon, and I will be your host today as we welcome a very special guest to our show. We have three-time Olympian Leah Amico with us today, and we are so excited to have you here. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here with you.
Great. Well, today I want to be getting into some topics that I think we both have in common, even though we lead very different lives. But let's talk about how we even met, because this is the first time we've ever been together. And so a couple of months ago, I got a phone call. I looked down, and it's Ruthie Bolton, a mutual friend of ours. And Ruthie says, "Hey, just had to call you. I'm hanging out with Leah, and we have gold. We have all kinds of gold in common. And if anyone knows Ruthie is so passionate about gold, and there's a reason for that. So you and Ruthie have something very much in common. We are both gold medalists, and Ruthie having 2 gold medals in women's basketball, and you having 3 in softball."
Yeah,
so
we were at the same Olympics, which is really cool.
Were you?
But there's just something special, even though she's a different sport, of being able to represent the United States of America. But yes, we were in, I think, the 96 and 2000 were the same Olympics.
Now that I didn't know, that makes this all the more special. I mean, the fact that you guys were in that together, did you know each other then?
No, we didn't know each other.
Wow, that's incredible. So I know that you guys do some work together on speaking platforms through Sports World. But the fact that you guys had come back together, and then she was able to connect us because we represent gold as well, and we'll get into that. That's why we're able to be here today. So again, thank you for being here, taking time out of your busy schedule. And you traveled here from California.
Yeah,
that's where you're from.
Mm-hmm. From Southern California.
And you just happen to have a speaking engagement in Dayton, Ohio area. Yes. And sometimes life just works out, because that made it possible for us to be able to do this podcast today. So you and Ruthie you guys spend a lot of time traveling all over the world and talking to young people, but also talking to adults and businesses about your passions, about a lot of the life lessons that you guys have learned through all your amazing experiences. And so I'm just so anxious to hear your story, because I haven't got to hear your whole story yet since we just met. So just let's start off by talking about what inspired you to want to play softball in the first place. Was there someone or something that got you interested in softball, and what age were you? And let's start your story back then.
Yeah, I was 6 years old when my parents signed me up for softball. I was the firstborn. My dad was really into baseball, and I was very rambunctious as a little kid. Like, I would ride my tricycle down the big hills. Like, I was constantly just running and jumping and playing. And so the fact that my dad loved baseball, and then the opportunity for softball to sign me up in a local league came up. And so in the spring, they signed me up in softball. And then that fall, they signed me up in soccer. And those 2 sports would be what would carry me through high school.
Wow. So at 6 years old, this all started. And I'm sure at 6 years old, you weren't thinking, someday I'm going to play in the Olympics. Or maybe you were. When did you start to realize that this is something that actually could be achievable? And did you watch the Olympics growing up? Was it something you've always been kind of drawn to, or how did the whole Olympic dream come to life?
Yeah, I think like most young girls, I was watching gymnastics in the Olympics, right? That's what we'd be glued to the TV.
Yes.
Now, my sister, she actually did do gymnastics and was a gymnast, and me, I couldn't even do a back bend. So softball was what I played, and I started taking pitching lessons when I was 8. I made all-stars. I loved competing. But no, I wasn't thinking of going to the Olympics, because as I got older, softball and soccer, both of those sports were not in the Olympic Games as I was growing up. And so I enjoyed watching it, but that was about it. Eventually, when I was 14 years old, my goal was to go to college and earn a scholarship. I was the first one in my family that would do that, but it was through winning a national championship at the age of 14 in Chattanooga, Tennessee, with my teammates from Southern California. In that moment, I thought, okay, this is bigger than just me playing in my local city, winning, a local tournament. But now nationally, our team was number 1, and I was the winning pitcher for us to do that. And that began the college journey and goal.
Yeah. So was there like a defining moment when you were in college, or how did the whole Olympic opportunity come available to you? And prior to that, was there a thought of that, or were you approached with that opportunity? Like, what actually happened in your mind or heart one day where you're like, oh my gosh, like this is real. Like this is something that I'm really going to be able to go do?
Yeah. So my freshman year of college, we got to the Women's College World Series. I played at the University of Arizona. I was on a scholarship there. And in the championship game, I thought this is the best thing ever. It's going to be on TV back at a time where softball and women's sports were not really televised much. And I got the only hit in the championship game, but there was a runner on second and she scored and we won 1-0 in the national championship. And I thought, okay, this is the best that there is. And I was 18 years old. And because of that moment, I had so much belief. And not long after that, they said softball's going to be in the Olympics in 3 years. And the timing could not have been better. I was this 18-year-old that was like, I'm going to be on that team. The goal just became bigger, right? I had earned the scholarship. I was on the team. We won the national championship. And then as soon as I heard that, I was like, okay, my eyes are set on trying to make Team USA. And a year later, I was on like a B team that went over to play in Guatemala. And I led the team in hitting and batted over 500. And then in 1995 was the first time I made my first Olympic team, a long time ago. But I was a college student at the time.
Yeah. Wow. I can't imagine what that moment must have felt like when you realized that this is actually going to happen. I mean, I don't know what the percentage of people who actually get to achieve experiencing an Olympic game, let alone the gold medals that you've achieved, not once, not twice, but 3 times. So softball is not even an Olympic game anymore, is it?
It goes in and out. So it's going to be back in 2028.
Okay, great.
The city is actually going to host the sport, even though LA is where the games are going to be.
Okay.
But it was in 2020. It was not last Olympics in Paris. So it depends. It's one of those sports right now that gets voted on. They're allowed to add 5 sports every Olympics or up to 5 sports. And so it's not a consistent sport in the Olympic Games. So it's only been in 5 Olympics. 3 we have gold, which I was a part of, and 2 we have silver.
Wow. That to me is just absolutely amazing. So from your Olympic experience, what was one of the most significant things that you took away from being in the Olympics? And was there one Olympic game that was more important to you, or that impacted you more than another? Like, what was your favorite one? Why?
They were all so different. So the first Olympics I was in college, I actually took a year off my senior year and then played a college game, year after. But Atlanta, Georgia, that one happened so fast. I didn't even know what happened. I literally was like, I was just in the Olympics. We have a gold medal. Okay, I'm done. My second Olympics, I had graduated, training got a lot harder. I'd gotten married, and then I went to Sydney, Australia. That Olympics was very special because we won that gold medal after losing 3 games in regulation play. And honestly, we were on the verge of going home without even competing for a medal, let alone winning gold. So that was something that we were tested. The only time we lost 3 games, we struggled. But I think the fact that we came back the way we did, that was really special. But then I actually became a mom. My husband and I, we were like, what do we want to do? I wanted to be a mom, but I also wanted to play. So I think Athens, Greece in 2004, I was 29 years old. I was a mom. I was a veteran. I had 2 gold medals already. I was a leader. I feel like that was probably for me, my best experience overall. I got to play for my coach, who I played for in college, who's like a dad to me. It was very special because I was a mom. It was special because a couple weeks before we went over to Athens, his wife suddenly passed away of a brain aneurysm. So playing for him and just to be able to allow him leading us through such heartbreak and yet still being so solid for us, I think it meant that much more because it also put it into perspective. This is a sport. This is a game. It's the biggest honor to represent the United States of America. I think that was one of the neatest things, was meeting all the athletes from around the world, but then saying we are representing our country and the pride of being able to do that. So they're all very unique. I probably overall, the last one we went 9-0. We scored 51 runs. We gave up 1 run. Wow. So that was a really phenomenal experience.
I remember reading in your book about one of the times you were stepping up onto that podium in the United States. I think it was your first one, where the national anthem started playing. And you just were overwhelmed with emotion because I'm sure you've heard that over and over and over again. But being on that Olympic platform, hearing the national anthem being played must have been just really an experience that
Yes.
it would be hard to explain other than experiencing it.
Yeah,
personally.
it's so emotional. Like, because I think what happens is in that moment, like you mentioned, like you've heard the national anthem how many times, but at this moment, like you're standing on this podium with your teammates, and it's weird how all the times of the sweat, the blood, the tears, the hard times, it's like that's what you think about there. Not just all the success, it's really the hard times that come up that you think, okay, it was all worth it. And what you went through with your teammates, the people behind you that have become like family to you, the coaches you played for. And then for me, my parents, I cried like looking and turning to where my parents were in the stands and my brother and sister, because I knew all the sacrifices they had made for me to get to that podium.
Wow. Yeah. That must have been just super emotional. I can't even imagine the second and third would have been any less emotional, because what you have to go through to continue to play at that level and to go back for gold 3 times. I mean, that's just an amazing accomplishment. I'm sure we're going to hear more about some of the ways that your team was able to accomplish that as we talk more about your book. But, I just want to understand, so everything you've been through and all these different Olympic experiences and things, why are you out speaking? Why are you out writing books? What is the thing that drives you? Why is it so important for you to share this experience with other people and for yourself? Why do you think it's so important?
One of the reasons I like to share is because I played with superstars, and up until college, I was a standout athlete. But when I got to college, there was another level. And I feel like I was overmatched in speed and power. In some ways, I had moved from being a pitcher to an outfielder. So I was overmatched as a pitcher. But I still found a way to play a very important part and to be a team player and to be coachable. And I feel like the values of what helped me become a 3-time Olympic gold medalist are things that I apply in my daily life that have allowed me to do so many different things. And I feel like they're messages that the world and these students of all ages, I'm able to speak right now to businesses as well, because the message is the same. Hard work, being passionate, using your skill set, being disciplined, all these different areas are such a value. So what I realized, it was really this value system that is what allowed me to then go and shine in where my sport, where I was talented, but also was surrounded by the right people. And so I love sharing that message, because I feel like if I can encourage people that want to give up after I've shared have said, okay, I'm going to keep going. If I can tell them, hey, I almost wanted to give up my freshman year of college when it got hard, but because I didn't, look at the path that it led me down. And so I feel like by sharing my story, I can remind people that they have talent, they have passion, they can make a difference. They need to surround themselves with the right people. And I just feel like it's that message that I know I was that athlete and that student that would hold on to those things, and that's what would propel me forward.
That's great. So speaking of, when you said, you just mentioned that when you were a freshman in college, that you had a moment where maybe you were going to give up. So if you could go back and give yourself advice, your younger self advice, we have a lot of young people listening to this podcast that might be in that same place, right? Where it's like, maybe I wasn't supposed to be doing this. Maybe I'm not good enough to do this. Maybe there's just some challenges in their life that's causing them to think something has to go and I'm going to have to give up on my dream. What advice would you give to your younger self, but also to some of the young listeners that are joining us?
I think I would have really tried to zero in on the fact, something that I learned much later, is that failure is part of success. And so the faster you can learn from it and grow through it, the better off you're going to be. I hated to fail. I'm a perfectionist. I learned later that, it's okay to hold on to the positive. That's eventually what helped me to have the belief I can make the Olympic team. But usually I was focusing on the one bad thing that I did, or the couple bad things that didn't go my way. And so I wish, when I was younger, I would have learned that, and I wouldn't maybe have allowed the emotion of it to just hurt so deep. But at the same time, it's hard because maybe that's what propelled me. Maybe that's what pushed me to work harder, to be better. So I think, but this idea of maybe just to not let it get me so down, also just that God would work all the things out, that the struggles I go through is part of the learning process as well. I would have probably given myself a little bit more of a value system to say, hey, your worth is not going to come from people around you. It's comes from who God says you are. And I think I would have just wanted to know that at a younger age.
Yeah, that's really good. It's so important to remind ourselves that, our value doesn't come in what we do, but in who we are. And, our failures don't define us. It's how we handle those failures and how we get back up and how we keep pressing forward. And I think that's one thing that we may have in common with our gold connection here. And so we have a book that's called Go for the Gold. It's a program that we teach to high school students, and many of our listeners may have had that program. But it's essentially like a playbook that we put together to help teens to navigate relationships well. And some of the things that, based on looking through your book and reading some of it in our program, some of the things that are common is, you focus on how it's important to have healthy relationships, how it's good to have good leadership quality, how it's important to have goals, and to be surrounded by a network of people that can help you to deal with those failures or to help propel you towards those successes. So your book, The Gold Standard, 14 Ways to Live an Excellent Life, the Life of Excellence. Tell me a little bit about how this book came to be. At what point in your life did you feel like, hey, I really want to share these 14 different things with young people and with business? I know you speak to adults as well. What are some of the things that were happening in this time of your life where you felt like I really need to get this shared with people?
I was getting opportunities to go and to speak. And a lot of times, I would get a theme that I was asked to speak on. And other times they'd say, hey, just whatever you want to share. So I'd share part of my story. A number of times I've been approached through the years of someone coming up to me afterwards and people saying, do you have a book? Hey, can I get your book? Do you have your story? And I was like, no, I don't have that. I have written a softball devotional that's been out for a number of years. But this was different because this was more like the journey. And this was these steps that when I sat down, it kind of turned into something I didn't expect. I thought, obviously leadership, I had the best leaders, I feel like, that helped me to become my best. And so I wanted people to hear part of my story of like, again, if I can do it, you can do it too. Mm. And as I actually went through the journey of these points of like, how did I become a gold medalist? Well, first of all, I saw myself being on the Olympic team. So goals are important. And I start there. And then I talk about like the mindset part, right? Because everybody's going to face challenges. And when most people give up, what causes you to keep going? And then the leadership piece, like you mentioned, and communication. How do I communicate? And then the discipline, the action piece. And so it kind of evolved into itself as I just sat down and started writing. Mm. And I thought it was going to be more leadership, but at the end of the day, I realized when I was a freshman in college, nobody looked at me as a leader, but I kind of turned it into the word of impact because I still made a positive impact. Yeah. I still, by how I showed up every day, by how I trained, by how my relationships were with my teammates, with my coaches, that allowed this just opportunity to continue to thrive and reach new heights. So with that, that's where I thought, okay, I'm going on and speaking. More opportunities are starting to come. I want to be able to say, this is part of my message, and a book can go where I can't. You obviously know that with the book that you have. It's able to get in hands of people that you've met that can go deeper, or people that you haven't met yet. And so I figured, it'd be a great way to send it out for people, maybe teams to be encouraged. And again, people of all ages. I had a principal say that he read it and he has given it to all of his staff. Oh, wow. And so we just never know. And I really think it's those values and those qualities that I'm sure, like you said, are very similar and match up with what you speak about in Go for the Gold and what the program shares, because these are just a value system that I think can set us up for success no matter what we're doing.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that you and I may also have something in common when it comes to a famous coach. I was reading in your book that you had quoted and actually met John Wooden. And that is actually my favorite coach to quote from. And I think it's even on my LinkedIn account where it has, a good coach can change a game, but a great coach can change a life. And when you're talking about not having to be the best player on the team, not having to be the most athletic or the fastest or the most talented, you can still be a leader. You can still make an impact because you can make an impact on a life, which is bigger than the game, right? In and of itself. And so, I just think that message is very important, especially for young people, because there's just so much pressure out there to have to be the best at something in order to feel valued at times. And so I love that you talk about that and how even though you've achieved 3 gold medals, you're still saying, like, I wasn't even the best athlete. I wasn't even the best friend. And we're like, what? Yes, you were. But you're saying, but I made an impact on the team that helped us to get to that goal. So having a network of people around you that are successful in multiple different ways can help propel you towards your actual success as an individual. And I think that that's something, that we want to talk about more and more, because who we surround ourselves with. One of the things we talk about is friendships and the relationships in our life. And I know you have a section in your book that you talk about the positive influences in your life versus the negative people in your life, and why it's so important to figure out who those people are and how to have those boundaries and how to make sure that you're surrounded by the positive people. So what are some examples of some of the positive people that you've had in your life? And maybe there's been some negative ones that you've had to maybe let go of because they were kind of holding you back a little bit from where, like you say, God was taking you.
Yeah, for sure. Obviously my parents, my mom especially was just a great example to me. Just her belief, her support. I think it's important to have those people that are there through the good and the bad, the ones that we can really lean on and be real and break down in front of, but then also celebrate. I was going to celebrate every success you have. My coach was just an amazing leader that gave really high expectations, but believed in me more than I believed in myself at times. My teammates that I surrounded myself with, obviously every day we pushed each other to be better, but the best part about it is we had different roles and different skill sets. So we actually made each other better. And I think it's important to be around people that are different than you, that maybe even see things different, because it can allow you to expand and just say, what do I believe? My friends in school, I think back to like having quality people that were making good decisions helped me to make better decisions as well. And so I kind of saw throughout my journey, it's maybe changed here and there, like from high school right to college, who I was hanging out with, and then raising my kids, finding a group of people who God has really placed in my life that have similar values. And, we're attending church together, going on vacations together, and just living life and going through the ups and downs and together. And so I've seen the value of that. I've seen that for my own children now as a mom. But I think it is so crucial to have the right people with the right value system that really are going to support you. And more importantly, like just push you on your way. I've had, like teammates or friends that I've had to challenge and say, hey, like you've said you believe this, but it's how you're living. And I've actually lost friendships like that at times, and it's hard, but I had to ultimately look back and say, well, I don't want to be surrounded with people who say one thing but live another. I'll love them and I'll support them, but when they're not happy to be around me because I brought out the truth, then there's nothing I can do about that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, those can be difficult, especially when you, especially as a young person wanting to fit in, wanting to feel like they belong. Sometimes it can be really hard to navigate some of those difficult situations where they may feel convicted to not take part in certain things, but then you risk not being associated with those friends or, missing out on things like that. So I think these conversations are really important for them to understand that their value comes from who they are, not what they do. And to find those people, right? To find that one person, those two people who can connect with you and have agreeing thoughts and actions that line up with what you believe, so that you can feel that you're have support in those things. So, well, what piece of advice would you give to our listeners who dream about becoming a professional athlete? Because I'm thinking we probably have some athletes that are interested in this conversation, and I want to talk a little bit about your perspective on, being a high school, then a college, and then an Olympic athlete.
I would say go all in, because I think when you're passionate about something and when you really want it and that is the goal, you need to be disciplined and you need to sacrifice and you need to put the time and the effort in. You need to do what matches what you're saying you want. See, there's a lot of people who say, oh, I'd love to do this, or I'd love to do that, but they won't do the work that would get them there. And I think for me, looking back, I loved softball. So to me, like any free time, like we're out there practicing, playing, like I loved it so much. It was not a chore to have to go practice it. And so to me, I would say go for it. But I'd say also get yourself like instruction. I had the best coaches. Make sure you have people that are going to push you to get better and not let you just go through the motions. I've coached some really talented athletes who do not work very hard. And so to me, like, again, that level of effort, max out. I think it takes that learn from the losses, be a great teammate. Like, I think those are all absolutely crucial to then get to the next level, because you're going to stand out and then respond really well from failure. Learn the lesson fast. I tell people, fail forward fast. Like, we're going to fail. So fail forward. Don't let it hold you back. Don't, like all of a sudden get really discouraged. Like, learn from it and go forward, but do it fast. Don't make it, take 2 months to learn the lesson.
Right.
Learn it, adjust, and keep moving forward.
Yeah. And those leadership qualities, the character, right? You said, some really good athletes that don't work very hard. That character building, right, is equally as important as the athleticism that it takes to be successful, especially at a higher level. Being able to mentally be able to grow, right, and not just grow physically and athletically, but to have that mindset to where there has to be maturity in order to handle those levels as they come. That has to kind of match that athletic ability as well.
Yeah, being positive, being confident. Being focused on what you want to achieve in the solution, not just what's not going well. And I think that's all the mindset of it, right? You use it and you want to use it in your favor instead of allowing it to really hold you back.
Yeah. Great. Well, what is one of the biggest takeaways that you hope our listeners learn from you today?
That all things are possible. I was on the back of a cereal box, like in the 2000 Olympics, again, a long time ago, but I tell people, not Wheaties. It was during the Olympics, not Wheaties, but it was Kellogg's. And they did a little promo where they had 8 athletes that they said were the boy and girl next door. And it was called Golden Crispix. And they had me featured where my sister went to the store, and I did eventually, and got my cereal. And I said, if I can do that, like, anything is possible. But it started with a passion and a drive and a focus, and like, I'm going for it. And so I just want to encourage people. Too many times we look at everyone's highlight reels on social media and we think ours does not match up. If I had done that, I would not have been an Olympian. If I had done the comparison game, if I would have thought about, can I really make this Olympic team? I very quickly could have talked myself out of it. Instead, I just stayed focused on what I knew I wanted to achieve, what my goal was. And then at the end of the day, I was able to leave my best out there. And when the team was named, I was on it. And so I want people to say, what am I passionate about? What are my strengths? What are the opportunities that are before me? And even if it scares me, I'm willing to go do it. That's what I want people to do, is try hard things. Do it with value, do it with character, right? Make sure you're doing the right thing and not the wrong thing. Yeah. But make a difference in this world, because you are here for a purpose.
Yeah, that's really good. So where can listeners learn more about you in your book?
My website is Leah Amico, LeahAmico.com. And my book is on there. The link, it's on Amazon. And I have podcasts, the Gold Standard with Leah Amico podcast, where I talk to pro and Olympic athletes, as well as talk about little short one podcasts where I talk about how to be more confident and, just different things that can make an impact of going into any environment and setting yourself apart. So my website is probably the best place, as well as social media, Leah20USA on Instagram and different platforms.
Okay, great. And there's just one thing in here I wanted to just read that I thought would be just something good for people to remember. Here in I think it's on the Lead by Example chapter, you had said, I already had an Olympic gold medal, 2 national championship titles, and was a 2-time first-team All-American. But it was never about what I had done in the past. I wanted to be my best at this moment. I worked hard to set the tone and to show what it looks like to become the best. And I love that, because it just shows that you had this and you had that and you had accomplished this, you had accomplished that. But none of that even mattered, because you were just interested in the present. You were interested in, okay, I did all that, but now how am I going to continue to be the best at who I am today and what I'm going to do going forward? And I just think that that's such a great message, because I think in our minds, we would think, well, you've accomplished this and you've accomplished this and you've accomplished this. What else is there? But your mind never went there. You always stayed, I'm going to be a champion every day. So what is one final thought that you would want to leave with our listeners?
If you want to win, then you think about this acronym. What's important now? You want to win each day. You want to win the game. You want to win on your test. What's important now? I think when we prioritize and we take care of the right things, then I think we can be successful no matter what we do. Success is going to look different for everyone. But when we prioritize what matters most, and I think it starts with knowing that we have character and value and we matter, and then we can go and help others know that they do too. So let's win the day.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again so much for being here with us today. And I hope that all of our listeners enjoyed this talk with Leah. And I hope that you will follow Leah and read her book and listen to some of her podcasts. And thank you for joining us today here on Teen Talk. And we'll see you next time.